is the Banner Baseball Show live on a Tuesday night as the Orioles make some news. As Jackson Holliday, the top prospect in all of baseball, is headed to the big leagues. Paul Mancano, joined by Andy Kostka and Danielle Allentuck. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You could be listening to us after the fact on any of your favorite podcast platforms. In any case, please give us a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe, or a good review. All of it would be much appreciated. These two already have some great articles up on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months about the news that Jackson Holliday is on his way to the big leagues. Let's go to you, Andy, first to discuss this news, because you confirmed it after Jeff Passan tweeted it out to the world. And wow. When Jackson Holliday did not make the opening day roster, I thought it could be a while before we saw him make his way to the big leagues. But nope, it is less than 2 weeks after opening day, and the 20-year-old is going to make his big league debut at some point very soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting timing. Obviously, the points that general manager Mike Elias made when Jackson didn't make the opening day roster was that they wanted more time for him at second base to learn the position at a very high level, and they also wanted to have him face more high level minor league lefties. Hasn't faced too many lefties. I think he's a 4 for 10 this season in AAA against left-handed pitching. Does have a home run. That was on his very first at-bat, actually, the AAA season. And, apparently they think he's ready. The production so far is that, at second base has not been great for Orioles second baseman. And just thinking of Tony Kemp is 0 for 9. Ramon Arias, who can also play third, obviously, and has a bunch. He's 2 for 22. So I think maybe this is a chance to liven up a lineup a little bit. And you saw, Danielle up in Boston had a great article about, Colton Cowser's big day. Here's another, young guy that has a chance to show out at the biggest level.
Yeah, Danielle, you were there to witness it up at Fenway Park. Colton Cowser bringing some life to that lineup. I know fans had been clamoring to have Colton Cowser play a few more games and start a few more games, but obviously he's a left-handed hitter, and the Orioles were facing 5 lefties to start the season. I think that's another big reason why Jackson Holliday was not on this roster to start the season. Do you think this was the case of the Orioles just wanting to play matchup baseball through the first week and a half of the season and then letting Jackson Holliday come up to face a longer string of righties now that things have settled down a bit?
I mean, it very well could be. I mean, they faced an awful lot of lefties in their first 10 games, but now they're in a stretch where it's a lot of righties coming up. The whole team struggled offensively in this stretch. It wouldn't have been just Jackson Holliday, but I think that they were worried about having him come up and fail at the major league level, and they didn't want to see that at all. But, tomorrow they're facing Cutter Crawford. He's a righty. They have another righty the day after that, and then the Brewers series is still to be determined. But if they're bringing it up, you have to think that they are bringing him up, and they are wanting him to play every day, and they are wanting him to stick in the majors, and that means that you're going to face left-handed pitching at some point. You're not going to always be able to do matchup base. So you have to think that they, may have done matchup base, but that they truly think that he's ready, because they're not going to option him at the first sign of trouble.
Absolutely. So let's address the elephant in the room, which is service time, because Jackson Holliday getting called up tomorrow, if he were to stay on the big league roster the duration of the season, so not get sent back down at all the rest of the way, means that he would accrue 173 days of service time, which is a full year's worth of service time, which means that he would be a free agent a year earlier than had the Orioles waited an extra day. And if he were to win Rookie of the Year at the end of the year, the Orioles will be eligible to receive draft pick compensation as well. So a lot on the line. And the fact that the Orioles waited until there was literally 1 day left for him to accrue a full year's worth of service time, I think, to me, guys, says that the Orioles would have been willing to have him on the opening day roster and give him that full year of service time if they felt better about him against lefties and him at second base for the first 10 games of the season, because they're giving him the full year of service time now, assuming he's going to stay here the rest of the way. You cannot say that it was a service time based decision. At least that's what Mike Elias would claim, that you cannot say it was a service time based decision to keep him down in the minors out of spring training. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's the fact that you're giving him, calling him up in time for a full season of service time. It knocks that out the window. I think it gives more credence to the idea that you had 5 lefties starting in the first 10 games. And I guess if you didn't love the idea of throwing him, as he's getting his feet wet in the major leagues, and then you're going to make it even harder with having 5 lefties on the mound, have him, start against a couple of righties, get his feet wet this way, could be a nicer introduction to Major League Baseball. That's, I think, probably the hope. That plays a lot more into it. They probably also wanted to see just what the defense looked like as well. He looked fine defensively in spring training. Has made a couple errors down in AAA. I think there was one throwing error I saw that was kind of in between on whose fault it would be. But he's looked okay at second base. I don't think there's going to be a huge drop off. Of course, Tony Kemp made a great sliding play today. And that was a play that a veteran great fielder makes, and who knows if Jackson immediately is going to be able to do that. But Jackson's a good fielder too. I mean, he's a shortstop, and he knows how to. He has a lot of range and a lot of speed. So we'll see what it looks like at the major league level. But I do think a lot of it was, now very apparent that it probably was that gauntlet of lefties that they wanted to avoid early.
Yeah. And Andy, you were just on the Banner Baseball show, yesterday, talking about the Orioles' offensive struggles. They broke out of it somewhat today up in Boston, and they have seemed to have righted the ship, at least for now, for one game. But they were severely struggling against left-handed pitchers through the first 10 games of the season. It was becoming a problem. And we were saying on the show, I was saying there's something to be said for just having the 26 best guys and not worrying too much about playing matchup baseball for the first 10 games of the season, because even their right-handed hitters, guys who traditionally do very well against lefties, like Ramon Arias and Austin Hayes, were struggling out of the gate against left-handed pitchers. Now they face a string of righties. So now Jackson Holliday, who is a lefty who has better numbers in his career in the minor leagues against lefties, or against righties, I should say, than lefties, will have an even easier road going forward. We don't yet know the corresponding move, though. Danielle, you saw Anthony Santander foul a ball off his foot up at Fenway today. We don't want to speculate as to his status, but would you just assume, based on everything that you've seen so far, that it would be Tony Kemp on his way out? Or do you think there's a possibility it's Santander heading to the IL, or somebody else, being sent back down in order to make room for Jackson Holliday here?
I mean, I think if it was Santander, it would be Stowers or Kirksted or Norby coming up, because they can all play the outfield, and the Orioles don't need another second baseman on their roster right now.
Right.
So he did foul a ball off his foot. He did end up getting replaced in the game, but at that point it was already 6-1, and he's a veteran. It was just interesting that he was replaced by Austin Hayes, another veteran who doesn't necessarily need more playing time. So that was the only thing that sparked me, but that didn't raise too much alarm to me. I would think it'd be Ramon or Tony Kemp, two of those older guys who would probably be DFA'd to make space. I'm not sure which one, but they are calling Jackson Holliday up to start at second base, and they're gonna have to make a 40-man roster move to do so.
Yeah, and the Tony Kemp decision is such an interesting one, because it came so late in the process. It came a day or two before opening day, and that's around the time when I'm sure the Orioles were looking at the calendar and determining who they would be facing for the next 10 days, which starting pitchers they would be facing for the next 10 days. And you do wonder if Mike Elias just looked at the next 5-10 days, the next, the 3 first series of the season, and said, boy, there are going to be a lot of lefties that we're going to be facing here. Let's bring in a veteran who can play second base, who, yes, he's a left-handed hitter, but who we believe is going to do better and give us more as a bench player so that we don't have to worry about Jackson Holliday starting. We don't have to worry about keeping him out of the lineup against lefties for the first 10 games of the season. What do you think about
But
that,
if
Danielle?
that was the case, why wouldn't they have just kept Colton wrong? Like that's or Tyler Nevin or any of the other guys they had in camp who could have filled that spot. It was just interesting to me that they literally went out and got somebody else. And it's not like Tony Kemp had been released the day prior and they picked him up right away. He had been released for about a week at the time the Orioles picked him up. So if he is the one that gets CFA'd, I think that we all have a right to question why he was even picked up in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, the other day I made a comparison on the show to Brett Phillips, who I thought when the Orioles picked him up in the middle of the 2022 season, I thought the Orioles were wasting their time a bit by kicking the tires on him. And he was holding a spot that could be taken by a prospect. At the time, that was Kyle Stowers. In this instance, it's Tony Kemp taking the spot of Jackson Holliday, a left-handed hitting second baseman. We know that's a specific archetype that Mike Elias likes. Left-handed hitting second baseman. See Adam Frazier. The Orioles could have just brought back Adam Frazier if they really wanted a veteran left-handed second baseman. So Tyler Nevin, plays third base, plays first base, plays corner outfield, is a righty. But Colton Wong would have fit that description, like you said, Danielle. That's somebody who was with the Orioles for the entirety of spring training and then ends up not making the team. And the Orioles go outside the organization to get a guy who was off the street and yes, he has the ties to Mike Elias back to their Houston days, but was not with the Orioles throughout spring training, was with the Cincinnati Reds throughout spring training, didn't make that club. And the Orioles went out, acquired him, and he's gone hitless so far. We don't know if he's still going to be, on the big league roster as of this time tomorrow. But Andy, what did you think of, the roster shuffling right before opening day and how it has worked out through the first 10 games of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, just like you said, adding a left-handed hitting second baseman and sending down a left-handed hitting second baseman was an interesting shuffle. I still think, probably the main factor of that was they figured they weren't going to play Tony Kemp very frequently. They haven't. Obviously, he started today, but he has not played much. I think only, as you said, 9 at-bats. You'd feel pretty comfortable with him as a 26th man. And maybe at that point, they didn't want a Connor Norby getting, going up and sitting on the bench when he's another prospect that probably could be playing. I still like the idea of, Connor Norby in the big leagues because he's a right-handed bat for all those lefties. I mean, would have made sense at the time, but hey, there's a lot of things that moves that go on with the, Colton Wong out. Tyler Nevin didn't make it off waivers, went to Oakland. And instead they took a flyer on Tony Kemp, a relatively reasonable deal for a major leaguer who has a lot of experience and can play multiple positions defensively very well. But yeah, I mean, it is an interesting move and somewhat surprising. I think as Danielle said, why not keep Colton Wong or Tyler Nevin if this was going to be if it was going to be 10 games, didn't probably need to go get somebody, but he is a great clubhouse guy and maybe that plays a role into it. Definitely. And maybe he's not the one that leaves. I mean, we're assuming. I mean, we're making. We don't technically know at this point.
It would be a like for like change if it is Kemp for Holliday, though. Like you said, a left-handed hitting second baseman. But you do think of for the first 10 games of the season, Tony Kemp not having to start every day and him not starting every day doesn't raise questions among Orioles fans. If Jackson Holliday were up with the big league team and starting every other day, not getting everyday starts for the first 10 games of the season, that would raise maybe not alarm bells. That would raise questions from Orioles fans. We saw how Orioles fans reacted to Colton Cowser not starting every day. I think some fans might have thought that the fourth outfielder was going to be starting every day, which I never believed. But I think some people were expecting. He's a top 100 prospect. He's a top 20 prospect, according to some. He's a former first-round pick. He should be getting everyday playing time. but the Orioles were playing matchup baseball. And if they were going to do that for the first 10 games of the season, Jackson Holliday was not going to be starting every day because they were facing 5 left-handed starters, which means he was going to be on the bench, just like Tony Kemp has been. And the Orioles fans were going to be asking a lot of questions. As for what we can expect, though, now from Jackson Holliday, we saw last year Gunnar Henderson already, yes, he got his feet wet in the big leagues at the end of 2022, but he struggled to start the 2023 season because he was 21, 22 years old at the time. Even Adley Rutschman, when he got called up 2 years ago, struggled out of the gate. His first 6 weeks took him a while to get his feet under him. Danielle, what do you expect from a 20-year-old in Jackson Holliday, the Orioles' 3rd straight #1 prospect in all of baseball, the former #1 overall pick? Are you expecting some kind of struggles out of the gate? And do you think it's unfair to expect him to hit the ground running here?
I mean, Holiday is only 20, but this is a kid, adult, who doesn't act like a 20-year-old. He's already married. He grew up in major league clubhouses. There's not a lot that scares him anymore. So I wouldn't expect him to kind of not be able to handle the pressure and not be able to handle the assignment mentally. But I think most players go through a rough patch, a rough transition when they go to the majors. I mean, when you just look at the caliber of pitching from AAA up to the majors, it's enormous. I mean, he was just playing a 6-game series in Charlotte against some pitchers who probably belonged in low A. And now he's going to be facing off against some of the best pitchers in the league right off the bat. So it's going to be a tough transition for him. Fans are going to have to expect him to go through a rough patch. But from my experience, what usually happens is you'll have a great first couple of games, as the adrenaline is still there. And then the league will sort of start to adjust to him, and he'll go through that rough patch and have to kind of find his way. But I think when we're really start to learn what type of player he is when we see how he comes out of that rough patch, how he's able to sustain himself for the rest of the season and kind of get through that. I think that's what we learned about Gunnar. He had that rough April into May, but we saw how he kind of reacted June through the rest of the season. He didn't really go through another slump the rest of the year. And that's when we really learned, Gunnar is for real. He's legit. He's Rookie of the Year MVP candidate. And I think we'll see the same with Holiday this year.
Yeah, and I think if this team hopes to get to the postseason, and they certainly do, you would want Jackson Holliday to go through those kind of struggles now and have him get through to the other side and figure it out by the time they get to these key divisional games in September and maybe some playoff games in October. Andy, back at the end of spring training, it was unfortunate timing because I think your article came out like a day before he got sent back down to AAA Norfolk, but you wrote an article where you talked extensively to Matt Holliday, the 7-time All-Star, and his father. What did you learn about Jackson, who he is growing up, and how that might have prepared him for a moment like this?
He's been preparing this since he was, in swaddling clothes. He's been in major league clubhouses his entire life, and his complex in Stillwater, Oklahoma, has been, people have seen it on his Instagram channel and things of that nature. But he has a barn that is outfitted with a sports court for competition, competitive pickleball that someday I hope to get in on. They have, a hitting machine. They have batting cages, and you have a 7-time All-Star, dad who's giving you batting practice along with, people at Oklahoma State, coaches at Oklahoma State as well. I mean, this is a guy that has been doing this for his entire life, as many of these guys have, but just around Major League Baseball for his entire life, which makes it a little bit different. A lot of people, they have to come in and get used to what a Major League clubhouse is, and that's what makes spring, if they get invited to Major League spring training, that's what makes that so valuable, is that you get a little bit of experience with what is, how do you act in a Major League clubhouse. Jackson knows. Jackson knows how to act. He knows exactly who he is, and he's been doing this for a really long time. So you shouldn't have to expect much of a learning curve in that facet. But as Danielle said, I mean, this is a guy that's making a big jump. There will be a learning curve on the field to facing high level pitching. And Paul, I like your point a lot about, this is a team that wants to be at its best in October. And to do that, you need to have Jackson have his struggles now, to kind of go through that learning period now. Just think back to when Colton Cowser was called up mid-season last year, hit 115. He gets called up in the middle of a postseason push, late summer. That's a tough situation to get put into, and to be expected to produce at a high level immediately when the games, obviously 162 games, every game counts, but when the games feel that much more important, there's so much more pressure on the game that late in the season. Tough circumstances. He comes back and he's a little bit more grounded this year, and he's feeling better. Jordan Westberg came up, did well last season, but just more comfortable this year because he's been through it, has had more time. Now Jackson will have, he'll have a month basically. You hope, if you're the Orioles, a month of kind of figuring it out, and they hope he performs at a high level. But even if he doesn't, you feel like you have the pieces around him that he can struggle a little bit and learn on the fly. But you hope. With that month learning, he should be ready come October to be at his best. That's at least the plan.
Yeah. As for the short term, though, Danielle, you're up in Boston, and you mentioned Cutter Crawford is starting tomorrow for the Red Sox. That's a righty, and then scheduled to start on Thursday for the Red Sox for a game, which I believe is going to be on some kind of Apple TV or some kind of national television. That is going to be Garrett Whitlock, 27-year-old righty. So that's back-to-back righties. We don't know the corresponding move yet. So we don't know if Tony Kemp's going to be on this team. We don't know who is going to be on this roster, on this 26-man roster come tomorrow. But would you expect Jackson Holliday to be inserted right into the starting lineup out of the gate?
Absolutely. If he is activated tomorrow, he is going to be starting at second base tomorrow night. Mike Elias said it in spring training. When he gets called up, he's going to play every day. And you would imagine that would start right away. As for Thursday's game, that's on MLB Network, just an FYI. So
that's
that will be a national game.
There it is. Which means, everybody in the nation could be introduced to Jackson Holliday. And then, of course, the Orioles come back home on Friday for a 3-game series against the Milwaukee Brewers, which means they could be facing their old friend DL Hall. They could be facing Joey Ortiz. And that means Corbin Burnes could be facing his old team in Milwaukee.
He's lined up for Sunday.
Line up for Sunday. So you saw him pitch today, by the way. Orioles fans were tearing their hair out after a frustrating weekend in Pittsburgh. Back-to-back losses on walk-offs. Offense is really struggling. Then Colton Cowser brought some life back into the team, and he hit the sprinkler on second base. And Corbin Burnes is on the mound shoving, giving up 2 hits and just 1 run over 7 innings today. Are the vibes back, Danielle? From somebody who's in the clubhouse, could the vibes have taken a more dramatic turn in the last 24 hours than Corbin Burnes shoving, Colton Cowser mashing, Orioles offense scoring, and Jackson Holliday is on his way to the big leagues?
Not even vibes related. Corbin Burnes is just incredible. It's so much fun to get to watch him every 5 days. He was saying today so casually that until the 3rd inning, he didn't even feel good today. And he only gave up 2 hits all day. It was just incredible. But Colton Cowser is for sure a vibes guy. And I think that the fact that he was the one who had a great start to the game, he had those 2 doubles early and went back to the sprinkler. The team said that the handlebars and the engine revving, that, they always said that was a tentative celebration, but they weren't having any luck. They only had 10 combined hits over the weekend in Pittsburgh, and they needed some good vibes back. So they went back to the sprinkler, which is, as Colton said post-game when I asked him about it, it worked well last year. Why not bring it back? We'll have to see what they do for the home run celebration. There was no home runs today. If they bring back the water hose or the beer hose, whatever you want to call it. I didn't see it in the dugout today, but it doesn't mean it's not in Boston. And, the number 1 prospect, who is also, not only the best prospect in baseball, one of the nicest guys. His dad is, beloved across the league, and I think Jackson is too. He's also really good friends with all those young guys. So the vibes are just going to continue tomorrow.
Yeah. The only problem, though, is it definitely cannot be a beer hose because Jackson Holliday is still 20 years old. So it has to be strictly water.
There is non-alcoholic beer, Paul. There are options.
That is true. That is true. I don't know if that might make them a little bit bloated in the dugout in the middle of a game, but the Homer hosts, hopefully somebody is shipping it up to Boston for them to enjoy over the weekend. But also, Danielle, you tweeted out at @D_Allentuck from Brandon Hyde that Kyle Bradish, the Orioles ace before Corbin Burnes arrived, is headed to Aberdeen and should be making a rehab appearance soon. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we don't know more yet. Kyle Bradish has been slowly progressing since he got his PRP shot in early February. They're hopeful still that he can avoid surgery. And all of spring training, we kind of heard and saw him playing catch, and then he was doing long ball and then throwing off the mound. And this is a really good step that he is throwing a rehab start now. Mike Elias said that both him and John Means, who is currently in Norfolk with the AAA team making rehab starts there, he just made a second, that they're both expected back early first half of this year. And these are two really good steps. You figure if Bradish makes his first rehab start sometime this week that, he's starting over, like you do on day one of spring training. So it's probably going to be 4 to 6 weeks until he is fully back. But it is just a fantastic sign for this pitching staff. If they can theoretically, get a healthy and Means and Bradish back soon, it gives them some flexibility to, move Tyler Reld or Cole Irvin or a Dean Kramer to the bullpen and just create so much depth for them and so many opportunities for them.
Yeah. And Andy, you mentioned earlier in the show about some other prospects that are very close to the big leagues, including Kobe Mayo, who hit a home run tonight for Norfolk, Connor Norby, who's hitting about 400 for AAA Norfolk, Kyle Stowers, of course, who, continues to break all kinds of records for the Tides. Do you feel like this could be the start of more call-ups, or do you expect things to kind of calm down? So long as everybody stays healthy, this is the group that they're going to have for a little bit.
I wouldn't be shocked to see a Kobe Mayo make his way up pretty soon too. Right-handed bat, a lot of power. Compared to the other guys, hasn't actually hit as many home runs as some of the other guys. I mean, Stowers had 3 in one game. So
Kerstead had 6 in his first 9 games, which is utterly absurd.
The power barrage from everybody has been crazy, but I still imagine Mayo the ability to play third base. We don't know exactly what the roster move is tomorrow, but to make room for Jackson Holliday. But if Ramon Arias really continues to struggle for a while, I mean, that could be a like for like change with him. But there's a lot of guys down there that could supplement this roster, and it's a good problem to have. I mean, the O's said it all during spring training, and it continues now. Here you are, 10 games into the season, you feel like you need to make a change, and you can call up Jackson Holliday.
Yeah, not a bad alternative when your offense is struggling. Just go ahead and turn to the number one prospect in all of baseball, who, by the way, is your third number one prospect the last 3 years. Guys, you're both my number one prospect. Thank you guys for hopping on late on a Tuesday night to discuss this breaking news. And of course, at AF Kostka is Andy's Twitter handle. At D_Allentuck is Danielle's. And they're both writing phenomenal stuff for the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe at $1 for 6 months. I'm at Paul Mancano, and please follow at All Banner Sports as well, where we will keep you apprised of everything. Going to be fun for Danielle up in Boston watching potentially Jackson Holliday's big league debut. But guys, please rest up over the next 10 hours before you wake up and start getting back to the grind all over again. I appreciate your time, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
And that just about does it for the Banner Baseball Show. Please subscribe anywhere that you get your podcast. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a good review. I will read it out here on the show if you give us a good review. For Andy Kostka and Danielle Allentuck, I'm Paul